She knelt before the cowboy, not to beg, but to choose her future. The sun hung low over the dusty frontier town, casting long shadows across the dirt streets. Claire wiped her hands on her apron and looked out across the small farm that had been in her family for generations. The wooden fence was weathered, the fields dry in places, but she worked hard to keep the land alive. After her parents had passed, the farm had become her responsibility. She had learned to rise before the sun, tend the animals, fix broken fences, and keep the crops growing. Life had been tough, but she was tougher. She refused to let the farm fall apart, no matter how heavy the days became. That afternoon, Claire heard the faint sound of hooves against the hard earth. She turned and saw a lone figure riding into town. The man's hat shaded his face, but there was a calm confidence in the way he rode. His horse moved steadily, not too fast, not too slow, and every step seemed measured. He was carrying supplies, bundles of cloth, sacks of grain, and small tools, but there was a lightness in the way he handled his load. Claire felt a strange pull of curiosity. She had seen strangers before, travelers passing through on their way to other towns, but something about this man was different. He stopped near the general store and began unloading his goods. The townspeople greeted him politely, but with distance, as if wary of newcomers. Claire noticed that he did not seem concerned with the stares or whispers. Instead, he moved with purpose, handling each bundle carefully. There was something steady about him, a quiet strength that spoke without words. When he caught her eye, he offered a small nod. Claire felt a flutter in her chest. She didn't know why, but there was a sense of familiarity in his gaze, like he understood something about her life without having to ask. She returned the nod, a simple acknowledgement, and went back to her work, though her thoughts kept wandering back to the man. Over the next few days, the stranger became a regular presence in the town. He came to deliver supplies, help wherever he could, and always spoke to the townspeople with respect. Claire noticed that he helped the elderly carry heavy loads, and offered a hand to anyone struggling. It wasn't just the help that caught her attention. It was the way he did it, with no expectation of reward or recognition. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Claire found herself walking along the edge of the field, thinking about her chores and the long list of things she still needed to do. The man's horse approached from the main road, and he called out a polite greeting. His voice was calm, steady, and carried a warmth that was comforting. "Evening," he said. "You're working late." "Yes," Claire replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "There's always more to do than time allows." He nodded, understanding. "I've learned that life on the land keeps you busy no matter what, but it also teaches you patience and strength." Claire looked at him closely. He wasn't imposing or boastful, but there was a confidence in his posture. His eyes were kind, yet there was a seriousness there too, as if he had seen much in his life and understood hardship firsthand. She felt a strange comfort in speaking to him, like he could understand the weight she carried. "Do you live around here?" she asked cautiously, curious about this stranger who had quickly become a familiar presence.
"I've been moving from place to place," he said.
"But this town, it feels like it could be worth staying a while." Claire smiled faintly. She liked that answer. It didn't come with promises or expectations, just honesty. In a world where people often spoke in ways that hid their true intentions, honesty was refreshing. The days passed, and the stranger, whose name she learned was Jacob, continued to visit the town for supplies. Claire and he began speaking more often. Their conversations were simple at first, about the weather, the crops, the animals, but slowly they started sharing more. Jacob spoke of his life on the road, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. Claire listened, fascinated by the way he seemed to balance experience with humility. One afternoon, while helping her repair a section of the fence, Jacob handed her a hammer. "Here," he said, "2 hands are better than 1. Claire accepted the tool, and together they worked side by side. It was quiet, peaceful work, and yet there was an energy in the air, an unspoken connection forming with every nail driven and plank secured. She found herself laughing more freely than she had in months, enjoying the ease of his presence. During a break, she leaned against the fence, wiping sweat from her brow. "You've seen a lot of places," she said softly. "Do you ever get tired of moving?" Jacob paused, looking toward the horizon. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But moving teaches you things staying in one place never will. Still, there's something about a place that makes you want to stay. Something you can't explain." Claire felt a pang of hope. Perhaps this stranger was more than a passing face. Perhaps he was someone who could understand her life and the choices she had to make. Yet she reminded herself that the future belonged to her alone. She couldn't depend on anyone else for happiness or stability. Weeks went by, and the bond between them grew quietly but steadily. Jacob's presence became a source of comfort in Claire's demanding life. He never intruded, never tried to control her, but his steady reliability made her feel less alone. When a sudden storm hit the town, with heavy rain and wind threatening the crops and the animals, it was Jacob who offered to help her secure the barn and bring the animals inside. He worked tirelessly, never asking for anything in return, and Claire realized that his actions spoke louder than words ever could. After the storm passed, the two stood outside the barn, soaked and tired, watching the last drops of rain fall. Claire felt a sense of gratitude toward Jacob, a feeling that went deeper than simple thanks. He had shown her that trust and support could exist, without obligation. "You always seem to know what to do," she said quietly, "even when I'm unsure." "I don't know everything," he said, "but sometimes you just have to do what feels right and hope it's enough. And you make decisions that are true to yourself. That's important." Claire looked at him, a warmth spreading through her chest. Here was someone who respected her choices, someone who understood that her life and her future were hers to shape. She felt a rare sense of peace, knowing that she could be strong and independent, yet still accept support when it was offered freely. That evening, as the town quieted and the sun set behind the hills, Claire found herself thinking about the possibilities that lay ahead. She didn't know where her path would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. The presence of this cowboy Jacob had changed something inside her. He had shown her that even in a hard, uncertain world, there could be connection, respect, and trust. And in that quiet moment, standing at the edge of the field with the wind carrying the scent of rain and earth, Claire realized that life was full of choices. Some were small, some were big, and for the first time in a long while she felt ready to face them, not out of fear or obligation, but with courage, hope, and the knowledge that her future was truly hers to choose. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of the frontier town carried on as always. Claire found herself noticing Jacob more often, not just for his quiet strength or the way he helped with chores, but for the way he listened. When she spoke about her work on the farm, he didn't interrupt or offer advice, unless she asked. He simply listened, nodding, showing that he respected her decisions. That simple act made Claire feel understood, more than she had felt in a long time. It was a rare feeling in a world that often demanded conformity or obedience, and it made her curious about him even more. Jacob, on his part, was careful not to intrude. He had traveled many places, met many people, and he had learned that trust and respect could not be rushed. He admired Claire for her independence, for the way she managed the farm without complaining, and for the dignity she carried even in the smallest of tasks. In quiet moments he found himself thinking about her determination, wondering how someone could carry so much responsibility and still retain a sense of hope and warmth. One morning, Claire was in the barn mending a tier in a feed sack when she heard the familiar sound of hooves approaching. She looked up to see Jacob riding slowly toward her, a bundle of firewood strapped to his horse. "Good morning," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "Thought this might help with the colder nights coming." Claire smiled, grateful. "Thank you." "I didn't think I'd have enough wood to last through the week." Jacob dismounted and began stacking the wood carefully beside the barn. His movements were efficient but gentle, each log placed as if he cared about more than just the task itself. Claire watched him for a moment, feeling the quiet admiration she had grown accustomed to.
"You've been busy here," Jacob said, glancing around the barn.
"Seems like the farm keeps you on your toes." Claire laughed softly. "It does. There's always something that needs fixing, planting, or feeding. but I don't mind. It's my life, my responsibility. I've learned to manage it all, even when it feels overwhelming. Jacob nodded, understanding. That's admirable. Most people would complain or give up when faced with so much. It's not about giving up, Claire said, looking up at him. It's about doing what must be done. And I've had practice. Losing my parents early taught me that. Jacob's gaze softened. He could sense the strength in her words, but also the quiet sorrow beneath them. He said nothing, letting her speak without interruption. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Over the next few days, Jacob continued to help where he could. He repaired broken gates, fixed a leaking roof, and even helped mend a stubborn fence post that had been leaning for months. Every time he helped, he did so without making Claire feel inferior or dependent. He treated her as an equal, acknowledging her efforts while quietly lending his support. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm hit the town. Dark clouds rolled over the hills, and the wind picked up, rattling windows and sending sheets of rain across the fields. Claire was trying to secure the animals in the barn when she heard Jacob calling out from the road. "Claire! Let me help you with the horses." Within moments he was at her side, guiding the frightened animals into the barn and securing the gates against the wind. His presence was calm and steady, and Claire felt a sense of relief she hadn't known she could feel so intensely. The storm was frightening, but having someone reliable by her side made it manageable. After the storm passed, they stood together in the barn, wet and exhausted but safe. The animals were secure, and the fields had survived with minimal damage. Claire looked at Jacob, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You always seem to know what to do," she said softly. Jacob shook his head, smiling faintly. "I don't always know. But I try to do what seems right, and sometimes you just have to trust your instincts."
Claire nodded. "I've learned that too."
Life on the farm teaches you that decisions have consequences, but you can only do your best. And of the following weeks, their friendship grew stronger. They would meet in the mornings to help with chores, and in the evenings they would sit on the fence watching the sun set behind the hills. They spoke of simple things at first, the weather, the animals, the tasks that needed doing. But slowly, their conversations became more personal. Jacob spoke of his travels, the people he had met, and the challenges he had faced. Claire shared memories of her parents, her hopes for the farm, and her dreams for a life she could shape herself. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and purple, Claire and Jacob walked along the edge of the field. The wind carried the scent of fresh rain, and the world seemed peaceful for the first time in a long while. "Do you ever think about settling down?" Claire asked, curious. Jacob paused, thinking. "Sometimes. But I've been moving for so long that it feels strange to imagine staying in one place. Still, there are moments when a place or a person makes you consider it, makes you wonder if this could be home." Claire looked at him, noticing the seriousness in his eyes. "And does anyone make you think that?" Jacob smiled faintly. Maybe someone has." There was a pause, a quiet moment where words weren't needed. The connection between them was growing, built on respect, trust, and shared experiences. Claire felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a sense of being seen, of being valued not for what she could do, but for who she was. The following day, Jacob helped Claire repair a section of the fence that had been damaged in the storm. They worked in silence, the sound of hammers and nails mingling with the gentle breeze. Claire noticed how careful he was with every plank, every nail, as if he understood the importance of the work beyond its physical purpose. "You're very precise," Claire remarked, smiling. "Most people would rush through this." "I like to do things properly," Jacob said. "It makes the work feel worthwhile, and it respects the effort you've already put in." Claire felt a surge of appreciation. His words weren't flattery. They were honest observations. She realized that she respected him in the same way she respected the land, for his effort, his patience, and his integrity. As the days passed, small moments like these accumulated. They shared meals, repaired equipment, and spoke late into the evenings under the stars. Each interaction built trust, a steady foundation that neither of them rushed to define, but both felt growing. One afternoon, Claire's mind wandered as she tended to the animals. She thought about her future, the farm, her independence, and the choices she would have to make. She realized that for the first time in years, she felt a possibility beyond mere survival. There was hope for a life that could include partnership, trust, and shared effort. And she understood that this hope was tied to Jacob, not because she depended on him, but because she saw in him someone who could walk beside her, equally strong and equally committed to choosing life on their terms. Jacob, too, found himself thinking about Claire more often. Her resilience, intelligence, and independence fascinated him. He admired the way she carried herself, how she managed her responsibilities without complaint, and how she approached life with courage and determination. He respected her deeply and found himself wanting to protect her, not because she needed protection, but because he wanted to share her journey. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the town grew quiet, Jacob and Claire sat together on the fence watching the golden light fade. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that their connection was growing stronger every day. "Life here is not easy," Claire said softly, breaking the silence. "But I've learned that hard work and determination can take you far. And having someone you trust makes it even better." Jacob nodded, his gaze steady on hers. "I agree. Trust is rare, but when you find it, it changes everything. You've taught me that in just a few weeks." Claire smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that she was learning to trust again, not just the land, not just her own abilities, but someone else, and it felt good. As the stars appeared in the sky, Claire felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She knew that life would continue to be challenging, that the farm would demand hard work and long hours, but she also knew that she wasn't facing it alone. Jacob's presence had brought her hope, trust, and the possibility of a future she could shape herself. The following weeks passed quietly, almost peacefully, and for a while Claire allowed herself to forget the struggles that had marked her earlier days. Life on the farm continued as usual, yet there was a growing sense that something new was unfolding. The mornings were still filled with chores, feeding the animals, checking the fences, and tending the crops, but evenings now carried a subtle warmth whenever Jacob stayed to help. They would sit on the fence, sharing quiet conversations under the fading light, or repair the barn together, working in tandem without needing to speak. One morning a commotion arose from the neighboring fields. A group of ranch hands from a larger farm nearby had come to discuss a boundary issue, claiming that part of Claire's land encroached on their property. The leader, a tall man with a booming voice named Harris, demanded that the fences be moved immediately. Claire felt her stomach tighten. She knew that arguing with him would not be easy. The man had influence in town, and most farmers simply accepted his claims to avoid conflict. But Claire had inherited her parents' stubborn determination, and she refused to yield. Jacob, who had arrived to help with the morning chores, noticed the tension immediately. He observed from a short distance as Harris's men approached Claire, their voices raised, their movements aggressive. "Claire," he said quietly, stepping closer, "do you want me to stay?" She looked at him, appreciating his offer but shaking her head. "No, this is my fight. I can handle it." "I need them to know I won't be intimidated." Jacob nodded, respecting her resolve. He stayed nearby, just far enough to avoid interfering, yet close enough to act if the situation escalated. His calm presence gave Claire a sense of courage she hadn't realized she needed. Harris gestured toward the fence. "Your property line is over here," he said loudly. "You need to move this fence or we'll handle it another way." Claire held her ground. "This fence has stood for years. My parents built it, and it marks the boundary clearly. I won't move it without proof that you're correct." The discussion grew tense. Harris's voice rose, and his men murmured amongst themselves, clearly agitated by Claire's defiance. Claire could feel her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady, refusing to be intimidated. Jacob watched silently, noting every detail, ready to intervene if things became dangerous. Then, Unexpectedly, one of Harris's men muttered under his breath, "Maybe we should leave it for now." She's not backing down, and the town isn't likely to support us in this. Harris frowned but did not argue further. He gestured for his men to step back. "This isn't over," he said, his tone warning but not threatening. He left, leaving Claire standing with Jacob nearby. "Are you okay?" Jacob asked, walking over to her. "I am," she said, brushing dust from her apron. "But it's frustrating. He won't give up easily." "You handled that well." "You stood your ground without escalating the situation? That's not easy." Claire felt a small smile tug at her lips. "Thanks. It means a lot that you stayed nearby. I didn't need protection, but knowing someone had my back made a difference."
Jacob's eyes softened. "I'm always nearby."
"But I like the way you handle things. You have strength that's rare." That afternoon, Claire continued her chores, repairing the fence and checking the crops, but her mind kept returning to the morning's confrontation. She realized that life on the frontier was not just about work. It was about standing firm in one's beliefs, protecting what mattered, and trusting oneself to make the right choices. Jacob's presence had reminded her that support did not diminish strength. It enhanced it. A few days later, a different challenge arose. One of the farmhands fell ill, leaving Claire responsible for tending the animals alone. Normally, she would have managed, but the illness of the man added extra strain. She was feeding the animals in the barn when she slipped on the wet floor, dropping a pail of water and spilling the feed. The animals stirred restlessly, some nudging her with concern, others bleating loudly. Claire took a deep breath, trying to calm both herself and the animals. Before she could gather herself, Jacob appeared at the barn door. "Need a hand?" he asked gently. Claire nodded, grateful.
That would help. Together, they managed the animals, cleaned up the spill, and restored order.
While working side by side, Claire realized that challenges, whether big or small, could be faced more effectively with someone who respected her abilities, but was willing to share the burden. Jacob never took over. He simply worked alongside her, allowing her to maintain control while offering support. Later that evening, they sat outside the barn, enjoying the quiet after a long day. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, the last light of the sun reflecting off the fields. Claire felt a sense of accomplishment, tempered with relief. "You make everything seem easier," she said softly, watching the horizon. Jacob shook his head. "I just make it easier to handle. You've been doing this on your own for a long time. I only help make it less lonely." Claire looked at him, feeling the depth of his words. They were simple, yet filled with meaning. In a world where people often acted out of self-interest, Jacob's kindness was genuine. She felt a growing trust in him, not born of necessity, but of recognition that he respected her independence and shared her values. A week later, another test came. A sudden fire broke out in a nearby field, likely caused by a spark from a passing wagon. The wind was strong, and the flames spread quickly toward Claire's farm. She ran toward the barn, her heart racing, and saw that the fire threatened the fences and the smaller fields. Without hesitation, Jacob appeared at her side carrying water buckets and helping her organize a response. They worked tirelessly, dousing flames, moving animals to safety, and securing crops as best they could. Sweat and smoke covered them, and Claire felt exhausted. Yet there was a sense of determination that pushed her forward. Jacob's presence was steady, unshaken, providing a quiet reassurance that gave her the strength to keep going. By the time the fire was under control, the sun had set, and the sky was filled with stars. Claire and Jacob sat on the fence, catching their breath, covered in soot and sweat, but alive and grateful. "That was close," Claire said, her voice tired but relieved. "I don't know what I would have done without you." "You handled yourself well," Jacob said, his tone calm. "I only helped where I could. You never lost your focus, and you kept the animals safe. That's what matters." Claire realized that challenges, whether in the form of difficult neighbors, illness, or natural disasters, had tested her strength and resolve. Yet each time she had emerged stronger, more confident in her ability to face the unknown. Jacob had been there, not to overshadow her, but to provide steady support. Their partnership, though unspoken, had grown stronger through each trial. In the following days, life returned to a quieter pace, but the lessons remained. Claire began to see that strength was not only about enduring hardship alone. It was also about recognizing when to accept help, when to trust another, and when to stand firm in one's convictions. Jacob had taught her that support did not diminish independence, it complemented it. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Claire reflected on how far she had come. The farm was secure, the animals were healthy, and she had faced challenges she never thought she could manage. More importantly, she had learned that true partnership was built on respect, trust, and understanding. Jacob had become more than just a helper. He had become a steady presence in her life, someone whose values aligned with her own, someone who inspired her without demanding anything in return. As the night grew darker, Claire realized that she was beginning to trust her future, not just the work she would do on the farm, but the life she might choose with Jacob by her side. She understood that challenges would continue to come, but with courage, determination, and someone she could trust, she could face whatever lay ahead. The weeks that followed the fire passed quietly, but a change had settled over the farm. Claire noticed it first in herself, a calmness, a confidence that she hadn't felt before. She moved through her daily chores with a steadiness that seemed to come from more than routine. Each morning as she fed the animals and checked the fields, she realized how much she had grown through the trials she had faced. Every obstacle had taught her something about her own strength and resilience. Jacob continued to visit, his presence a quiet certainty in her life. He helped when asked, stayed close when she needed encouragement, and never overstepped. Their conversations had deepened, moving beyond small talk and chores. They spoke about dreams, about choices they had made, about moments that had shaped them. Claire found herself looking forward to these conversations, feeling that with him she could share pieces of herself that she hadn't revealed to anyone else. One late afternoon, Claire was repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in the recent storm. The wood was heavy and her muscles ached, but she refused to give up. She had learned that hard work was part of life, and giving up was not an option. She heard the familiar sound of hooves behind her and turned to see Jacob approaching, a calm smile on his face. "You've been working hard," he said gently. "Let me help with that."
Claire shook her head. "No, I want to do it myself."
"It's my responsibility, but I appreciate your offer." Jacob nodded, understanding her determination.
"I know."
"I just wanted to be nearby in case you needed me." She smiled faintly, touched by his consideration. "You're always nearby. I appreciate that more than I can say." They worked in silence for a while, the sun casting long shadows across the field. Each movement, each nail driven into the fence was a reminder of the life they were building together, not just on the farm, but in respect. After the work was done, they sat together on the fence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of gold and purple, and the air carried the faint scent of wildflowers from the fields. Claire felt a sense of peace, a quiet knowing that the world, despite its challenges, could also hold moments of beauty and connection. "Jacob," she began softly, hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about the future." "What about it?" She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I know I've always had to be strong and independent. Life demanded it of me. But I also realized that strength doesn't mean facing everything alone. And lately, I've been thinking about choices, about what I want, not what circumstances force upon me." Jacob listened quietly, his gaze steady and patient. He had learned to respect her thoughts and decisions, understanding that she would speak when she was ready. "I feel," Claire continued, "that life has given me a chance to choose. And I want to make that choice consciously, not because I have to, but because it feels right." Jacob's expression softened. "I understand. And I'm honored that you would share that with me."
Claire looked at him, her heart steady but racing with anticipation. She realized that this moment was different.
This was not about work, survival, or even simple companionship. This was about making a choice that would shape the rest of her life. She wanted to choose it consciously, with clarity and intention. Taking a deep breath, Claire knelt before him, a gesture that was not of submission, but of purpose. She looked up at Jacob, her eyes filled with honesty and determination. "I am choosing my future," she said softly, "and I want it to be with you if you are willing to walk it with me. Not because I need you to save me, but because I want to share my life with someone I trust, someone who respects me, and someone who values the choices I make." Jacob's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise, admiration, and emotion crossing his face. He had faced many situations in his life, had seen many people, and had dealt with countless challenges, but this moment struck him deeply. Claire was not begging or pleading. She was declaring her intent, her autonomy, and her hope. He reached out and took her hand gently.
"Claire,"
he said, his voice steady but full of feeling,
"I've traveled far, seen much, and met many people. But you
are unlike anyone I have ever known. I respect you for your strength, your honesty, and your courage. And I will walk this path with you, side by side, as you choose it." Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of relief and joy mingled with anticipation. She had not only declared her choice, but had found it accepted with the same respect and understanding that she had come to admire in him. They stayed there for a long moment, hands clasped, gazing at the horizon as the sun disappeared completely behind the hills. The world was quiet, except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. It was as if time had slowed to honor the significance of their decision. In the days that followed, their relationship deepened in subtle, meaningful ways. They worked together on the farm with renewed energy, repaired fences, tended crops, and managed the animals. Each task, no matter how small, was approached as a shared responsibility, a symbol of the life they had chosen to build together. One morning, Claire and Jacob were planting seeds in the fields when a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and new growth. Claire paused, looking at the neat rows they had planted, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. "Every seed we plant," she said thoughtfully, "is a choice, a small beginning that can grow into something much larger, just like our lives." Yes, and just like the seeds, the choices we make now will shape the future. But with patience, care, and effort, they can grow into something beautiful. Claire looked at him, realizing how much they had both grown in a short time. The trust, respect, and shared experience between them had created a bond that felt unshakable. She felt confident not just in her own abilities, but in the life they could build together. One afternoon, as they repaired the barn roof, a strong wind blew across the fields. A loose plank rattled dangerously, and Claire instinctively reached for it. Jacob was there immediately, steadying the wood and guiding her movements. Their coordination was seamless, a dance of mutual understanding and respect. After the work was done, they sat together on the roof's edge, legs dangling over the side, looking out over the fields. The sun was low, casting a golden glow over the land. Claire felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Jacob, but for the life she had, the choices she could make, and the future she was shaping. "I never thought life could feel like this," she said softly. "So full of possibility, of hope, and of trust." Jacob turned to her, a gentle smile on his face. "It takes courage to trust, to choose, and to open yourself to something new. You've done that, and it's inspiring. I'm proud to walk beside you." Claire felt her heart swell with emotion. She realized that the true measure of strength was not just in surviving hardships, but in making conscious choices, in trusting oneself, and in sharing life with someone who respects and values those choices. The days continued, filled with hard work, shared laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Claire found herself more confident than ever in her ability to face challenges, and she trusted that together they could handle whatever came their way. Jacob's presence was no longer just comforting. It was a source of strength, a reminder that partnership was not about dependence, but about shared effort, respect, and mutual support. One evening, as they sat by the fire outside the barn, Claire reflected on how far she had come. She had faced challenges she never imagined she could overcome. She had learned to trust herself, to make decisions with confidence, and to accept help without losing her independence. And now she had chosen a path for her future, a path that included Jacob, not because she needed him, but because she wanted him by her side as an equal partner. As the stars appeared in the sky, Claire felt a sense of peace and anticipation. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, that the farm would demand effort and care, and that the world outside their small town would remain unpredictable. But for the first time in her life, she felt certain that she could face it all, not alone, but with someone she trusted, someone who valued her choices, and someone who had chosen to walk beside her. The days following Claire's choice were filled with a quiet but profound sense of purpose. The farm seemed different somehow, as if the soil itself recognized the strength of the life she and Jacob were building together. Each morning she rose before the sun, as always, tending the animals and checking the crops. But now the work was lighter in spirit, filled not only with responsibility, but with partnership. Jacob was there, not to take over or direct, but to share in the effort. Side by side, his presence steady and reassuring. Claire noticed the small differences in life now, how the sunrise looked warmer when shared, how a breeze through the fields felt lighter when someone she trusted was nearby, how even ordinary tasks became moments of connection. They would work together on repairing fences, mending tools, and feeding the animals, speaking little, but understanding each other perfectly. The rhythm of their days was simple, yet rich in meaning. One morning, as they were gathering hay in the upper fields, a visitor arrived. A neighboring farmer, an older man with a kind face, came to offer advice about irrigation. He had noticed Claire's hard work and Jacob's steady help. "You two make quite a team," he said with a smile. "The farm's looking better than it has in years." Claire felt a glow of pride but quickly shifted it into modesty. "We're just doing what needs to be done," she said, glancing at Jacob. Jacob nodded, smiling quietly. "We do what we can, and we support each other." The older man chuckled. "It's a rare thing to see these days, people working together without arguments, without ego getting in the way. You're lucky to have that." Claire looked at Jacob, feeling a warmth she could not fully describe. Luck had little to do with it. It was choice, trust, and respect. They had chosen to work together, to face challenges together, and now their lives had become intertwined in a way that felt natural, steady, and right. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they continued their work, moving through the fields with calm determination. Each bale of hay, each row of crops, each task completed together strengthened the bond they had formed. It was not the dramatic gestures of romance that defined their connection, but the quiet, consistent partnership that grew in every shared effort. That evening, after a long day, they sat on the porch of the farmhouse, watching the sky turn gold and purple with the setting sun. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of wild flowers and fresh earth. Claire leaned back against the railing, a sense of contentment settling over her. "Life feels different now," she said softly, almost to herself. "It's still hard, still full of work, but it feels lighter." Jacob looked at her, his expression gentle. "That's because you're not carrying it alone anymore. You've chosen to share the burden, and that makes all the difference. I've learned that strength isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about knowing when to accept help and who to trust. You've shown me that." Jacob reached out, placing his hand over hers. "And you've shown me what it means to respect someone's choices, to trust them to lead their own life."
"That's rare, Claire. That's why I admire you so much."
The night grew quiet and stars began to appear overhead, scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns. Claire felt a deep sense of peace. She realized that happiness was not about escaping hardship, but about facing it with someone who respected, supported, and shared the journey with her. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a comfortable routine. The farm prospered under their combined effort. Crops grew strong, animals were healthy, and the fences held firm. But more importantly, Claire and Jacob continued to grow closer. Their bond strengthened not just by shared labor, but by mutual respect, understanding, and quiet companionship. One afternoon they were repairing the barn roof together when Claire paused, looking out across the fields. "I never imagined life could feel like this," she said softly. Full of choice, trust, and hope. Jacob smiled. "It takes courage to choose, to trust, and to accept help when it's offered. You've done all of that, and more, and now you see the rewards of it." Claire felt a surge of gratitude. She realized that her life had transformed, not because the world had become easier, but because she had chosen to face it with honesty, courage, and a partner she could trust. She had learned to stand on her own, but she had also learned the power of shared effort, respect, and companionship. Evenings were their favorite time. They would sit together on the fence or the porch, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. Those quiet moments, when the world seemed still and only the sound of wind through the trees or the distant call of an owl could be heard, were the moments when Claire felt most certain of her future. She had chosen it consciously, with clarity and intention, and it included Jacob, not because she needed him, but because she wanted to share life with someone who understood her. One evening, as they finished a long day of work, Claire turned to Jacob. "Do you ever think about what the future holds?" she asked. Jacob nodded, thoughtful. "I do, but I don't worry about it as much as I used to. Life is unpredictable, yes, but with the right person beside you, it becomes something to face with confidence instead of fear." Claire felt her heart lift. "I used to feel like I had to face everything alone, that relying on someone meant weakness. But I see now that true strength comes from choosing wisely who to share life with and trusting them to stand beside you." Jacob reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "And I choose to stand beside you, Claire, not because you need me, but because I want to. Because I respect you and value the life we're building together." The simplicity of his words, the honesty behind them, filled Claire with a deep sense of joy. She realized that love and partnership were not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. They were about respect, trust, shared effort, and choosing each day to walk together. In the weeks that followed, Claire and Jacob continued to build their life together. They planned for the future of the farm, repaired old buildings, and tended to the land with care. They worked side by side, celebrated small victories, and supported each other through challenges. Every moment, from the mundane to the extraordinary, strengthened their bond and reminded them of the value of mutual respect and trust. One morning, as they worked planting a new section of crops, Claire paused to look at the horizon. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we hadn't met?" she asked. Jacob shook his head.
I don't. Meeting you changed everything for the better.
"Life would have been harder, lonelier. I can't imagine it any other way now." Claire smiled. "Me neither."
I feel the same. Their days flowed into months, and the farm thrived.
But more than that, their relationship flourished, built on a foundation of shared work, respect, trust, and choice. Claire realized that the life she had once thought would be filled with struggle and solitude was now rich with possibility, companionship, and fulfillment. Evenings remained their favorite time. They would sit quietly, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying the presence of the other. The sun would set, the stars would appear, and they would reflect on the day, grateful for their shared journey. Every conversation, every task, every quiet moment strengthened the understanding that they were not just surviving life, they were building it together. One night, as they watched the stars, Claire spoke softly. "I've learned something important over these months."
Happiness isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about choosing the people you trust, the life you want, and facing the world with courage, honesty, and respect.
Jacob squeezed her hand. "Exactly, and you've taught me that too. I've seen how strong, brave, and wise you are. And I'm proud to walk beside you, sharing the path you've chosen." Claire felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of contentment she had never known before. Life on the farm, with all its work and challenges, had become a source of fulfillment, not just responsibility. She understood that love and partnership were not about dependence, but about shared choices, mutual respect, and walking together through every challenge and joy. As the seasons changed, the farm grew stronger, the fields richer, and the animals healthy. Claire and Jacob continued their life side by side, facing hardships and celebrating victories together. And in every moment they remembered that the foundation of their bond was not fleeting passion or convenience, but conscious choice, trust, respect, and shared effort. Claire had knelt before Jacob not to beg or surrender, but to choose her future. And in choosing, she had discovered freedom, joy, and a life rich with partnership, hope, and love. The world around them remained challenging, as it always had, but together they knew they could face whatever came, build whatever they dreamed, and live fully in the life they had chosen.